Hi peeps! So in this video, I'm going to demo how to do a crochet provisional cast on. A provisional cast on is simply a temporary cast on you can use when you want to hold live stitches for later use. You would use a provisional cast on, for instance, when you want to graft two ends of a knitted piece together to create a seamless piece, or in the case of a hat brim or a hem or a neckline where you want a professional folded edge. You can also use it when you want the beginning of a knitted piece to have the same look as the end of the piece. The provisional cast on is used a lot, and it's a really important knitting skill to learn how to do. So let's get to it. Okay, peeps. So now I'm going to show you how to do the crocheted provisional cast on. It's actually my favorite crocheted provisional cast on. And so to get started, what you'll need is a crochet hook and the knitting needle that you're going to be casting the stitches onto. And then what I have here are two different yarns. One of them is our project yarn, the yarn we're actually going to be knitting our project with. And then the other one is our provisional cast on yarn. We use a waste yarn for our provisional cast on because we'll eventually be taking out that waste yarn and picking up live stitches so that we can work with them in whatever manner our pattern tells us to. And so you'll notice that the provisional yarn is a different color than the project yarn, and that's for a specific reason. It makes it a whole lot easier to see your live stitches in your provisional yarn when you go to unzip that provisional and pick up the live stitches. It's easier to tell where you are when you have that provisional cast on done in a different colored yarn. So let's get started. I'll start by setting aside our working yarn for right now. And so we have our provisional yarn, and we're going to start by making a slip knot. And you don't have to leave a long tail or anything for that. And we'll put that slip knot right on our crochet hook, just like that. And you want to cinch that up, not too tightly. Fairly snug, but not super tight so that it's easy to work with. And then what we're going to do is set up, we have a tail end here and that just hangs there. And we're going to set up with our working yarn like we're going to be crocheting, just like that. And then we're going to take our knitting needle, and we're going to have it right beside to the left of the crochet hook, and we're going to kind of hold that in our left hand along with, to start out with the tail of the yarn. And we have the working yarn over our index finger on the left hand. We have our knitting needle to the left and above the working yarn. And what we're going to be doing is crocheting over the top of that knitting needle, and that is what adds the stitches to the needle and does the cast on. So it goes like this. We take our crochet hook over the top of the needle, bring it under the working yarn, and pull it right down through that stitch on the crochet hook. And you'll notice that has made one stitch over the knitting needle. And now we're going to do that again. So to do that, we have to have the working yarn under the knitting needle. We take it between the crochet hook and the knitting needle. And then once again, we bring our crochet hook over the needle, bring it under the working yarn, and pull it down through the stitch on the crochet hook. Now we have two stitches. Yarn back between the needles. Bring the crochet hook over the needle, under the yarn, pull it through. And we just keep working that rhythmic motion over and over until we get the exact number of stitches on our needle that our project calls for. It's actually quite rhythmic and fun. You really get in a groove with it. And so we just keep doing that until we get enough stitches. Let's see, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I'm going to do one more to make an even number. That'll be a good number to work with. And then what we do, once you have the right number of stitches on your needle, what you do is you just do a crochet chain in that last stitch. So we're just going to chain down. I'll do maybe a couple more here. Makes a nice little chain. And then what we're going to do is cut that off. My scissors over here. You don't have to leave a long tail. And we're going to take our crochet hook and we're simply going to pull that end right through, which seals it off, so it's not going to go anywhere. And now you can see we have cast on our stitches onto our knitting needle using the crochet cast on technique. And so next I'll show you how to finish off the cast on and start the project. Stay tuned. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take our project yarn. I have this nice purple yarn here, and we are simply going to knit down that first row, and this is very important. We always want to knit that first row after the provisional cast on. This is what allows us to be able to unzip that cast on when we're ready to capture those live stitches again. And it sets us up very nicely for our project. And by doing that, we'll be at the same point we would be at if we did just a regular cast on. So there's that first knitted row. And now we just start and work whatever stitch work our project calls for. So in this case, I think I'm just going to do a knit one, purl one ribbing. And I'm picking that because I actually have a group project going on right now that requires it's a ribbed hat, and it requires a provisional cast on, so that by the time we're done with the ribbing, we can fold it up and make a double ribbed band. And to do that, we have to have a provisional cast on. Well, you don't have to, there are other ways to do it, but the most professional way is to do it with a provisional cast on. So I'm going to continue ribbing here for a bit, and I'll be back in the next video with how to unzip that provisional cast on when you're ready to, and get those live stitches back. Stay tuned. Okay, so now I am finishing up this nice little ribbed piece, and you'll notice that I have this ribbed piece and I still have my provisional cast on in the beginning. And so now we're ready to show you how to unzip that provisional cast on and get with a separate needle, we're going to get these live stitches back. And to do that, we're going to start from this crocheted tail end. And in that way, we'll be able to unzip this and go stitch by stitch to pick these up. If we started over here, it would not unzip, and you'd be picking each of these stitches out one by one, which you can do, but it is quite tedious. And so you always want to start, and that's why we do the little crochet tail, so you know where to start from. So to do that, we are going to undo this little sealed off edge that we did just by pulling that end back out. And now we have those all little live stitches that we can just start to pull out. And so we're going to pull those out until we get back to the stitch that's holding our project right there. You can see that there's the first stitch. And so what you do is you just start unzipping stitch by stitch. So you just gently pull on that until the stitch pops out, and you can see it there, and you put it on your needle. And then you pull out another one, and the stitch is right there, and you put it on your needle. And you just kind of keep going along in that manner until you have recaptured all of your stitches. Now sometimes I find it when you have two different colors of yarn, it's really easy to see those stitches on the underside, and you can see where the white thread is going through the purple thread, and you can simply just stick your needle back in that purple stitch and then slide it out. So sometimes if you just go to the back side, find the stitch, slip it in there, pull the needle out, or pull the thread out. It's kind of a nice way to do that. It's a little more efficient for me, but not for everybody. So you just do what's comfortable for you. And when we get down to the end, it looks a little weird sometimes. It gets a little jumbly down here, so we just keep going, and you'll get to one last stitch. It's probably the most confusing part of the whole thing, but you'll see we have that original loop that our crochet hook was in, and then we've got then it's going through one more stitch in the project. And so we simply have to capture that last stitch, and then you can just pull out the remaining provisional yarn. And so now you can see, we'll get these needle tips lined back up. Now you can see that we've got two sides of our knitting, right now both with live stitches. Typically you would knit, do whatever you needed to do, bind off, and then you'd go back, pick up your provisional stitches and do whatever you needed to do, or keep them live and do a graft. In my case, with my hat, we're going to fold this up and knit these two stitches together, front and back, all the way across, and that makes a nice little seam on the back side and makes a nice professional little folded brim. And so that is how you do a provisional cast on, and how you unzip it and get the live stitches back. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Stay tuned for more technique videos in the future.